Today on the podcast, Jonah and the mission of Jesus. Hey everyone, welcome to the Elmwood Midweek Bible Podcast.
Matt, where are you?
What do you mean, where am I?
Where are you?
I'm in space.
Why are you in space?
Because I've joined the Space Force.
Proceed.
Our goal here at this podcast is to help you understand your Bibles and see how everything in it connects with Jesus, whether on Earth or in space. We've been in a series on the book of Jonah, and we've just finished chapter 1. And we don't really have time to recount the entire chapter, but if you're not familiar with the story, hit pause, go back and read Jonah chapter 1 in one sitting. It doesn't take a long time before you move on. And what we're going to do today is we're going to look at a passage in the Gospel of Mark. And if you've been paying attention in Jonah chapter 1, then you should kind of get a little bit of deja vu with what we've seen in Jonah. So as we look at Jonah and Mark side by side, we're going to get a greater understanding of both Jesus' identity and of his mission.
Yeah. There's some pretty incredible parallels that exist between Jonah and Jesus, and one of the places that we see that is in Mark chapter 4, verses 35 through 41. So Matt, would you go ahead and read that for us?
Sure. It says, "That day, when evening came, he said to his disciples, 'Let us go over to the other side.' Leaving the crowd behind, they took him along just as he was in the boat. There were also other boats with him. A furious squall came up, and the waves broke over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Jesus was in the stern, sleeping on a cushion. The disciples woke him and said to him, 'Teacher, don't you care if we drown?' He got up, rebuked the wind, and said to the waves, 'Quiet, be still.' Then the wind died down, and it was completely calm. He says to his disciples, 'Why are you so afraid? Do you have no faith?' They were terrified and asked each other, 'Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him.'"
Yeah, so notice the parallels. If you're reading Mark chapter 4 with Jonah chapter 1 in the back of your mind, you'll notice there's a number of different things, 6 of them I have here, that are parallels between them. Number 1, a violent storm arises. Number 2, there's an imminent danger of the ship breaking up or sinking. Number 3, there is a prophet who is asleep during the storm in the boat. Number 4, the prophet is quite rudely awakened by terrified shipmates. Number 5, the storm is calmed. And number 6, the shipmates then are awestruck at this display of divine power. Now, I think it's easy for us, if we're reading these passages side by side, it's easy for us to see the parallels. But the question is, well, what does it mean? The parallels that we see here, I think, are intended to help us clarify Jesus' identity and mission. So first, the identity of Jesus. It's in the book of Jonah that Yahweh is the one who himself calms the storm. And we see in Jonah's interaction with the sailors on that boat, he identified his God as Yahweh, the one who made the dry land and who made the sea, meaning he has authority over it. And so he is the one who calmed the storm. And then so we come to this passage, and what we see here is that Jesus does what Yahweh does in the book of Jonah. And what we see this sort of leading us towards is that Jesus is God himself in human flesh. And the book of Colossians makes it really clear, as well as other places in the New Testament that talk about Jesus as the one through whom all things were made. He is the creator God. He's the creator and the sustainer of our world. And so in this way, we see the identity of Jesus being expressed because Jesus does what only Yahweh does in the book of Jonah. The second thing we see here, though, is we see something of the mission of Jesus. There's one commentator that said really helpfully that the deep sleep that both Jonah and Jesus experience in the boat symbolizes their death, and it sort of anticipates their journey to Sheol, or to the realm of the dead, and back again. And so we see in the book of Jonah, Jonah, we're told, went into the belly of the fish for 3 days and for 3 nights, and then he was yacked up on the shore and went to Nineveh. We see Jesus then, the greater prophet, going down into the grave for 3 days and for 3 nights. So there's, again, another parallel between them. But one of the things that's different is that with Jonah, it was because of his own disobedience that he went to the brink of death and back again. But in contrast to that, we see that it was because of our disobedience that Jesus allowed himself to be executed, to sit under the judgment and the justice of God. And it's his resurrection, his coming out of the grave, which symbolizes, which is parallel to Jonah coming out of the belly of the fish. His resurrection proves his authority over death and over the power of sin that is over us. And we see that Jesus, in being in the place of Jonah, being the one who, like Jonah, goes into the belly of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights and then comes back out, is a foreshadowing of his greater work, his death and his resurrection. And just one last sort of really cool thing that we see in Mark's gospel, there's sort of a plot twist if you're paying attention. In Mark's gospel in chapter 4, Jesus is in the boat with his disciples, and in the midst of their distress, Jesus is asleep. And then at the end of the book of Mark, we see when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane, as he is in his hour of greatest distress, his disciples are sleeping. And so the tables have been turned here, and there's just so many good parallels between this. But I'll just leave it at that for today.
I love when those little details stand out. It kind of brings to light the brilliance of both the Spirit's inspiration and also his work through the authors as they were putting together these Gospels. So I appreciate that parallel that you pointed out. But let's think for a minute just about how we can put into practice or respond well to these connections between Jonah 1 and what we're seeing Jesus doing in Mark 4. So the first one is this right here. It's a question. How does the obedience of Jesus drive us to obedience today? So as we think about Jesus as a better Jonah, right? Jonah is sleeping because he's disobedient. Jesus is sleeping, but eventually goes in everything that he does, right? In obedience to the Father. How does Jesus' obedience inspire us to love him more deeply and obviously follow him more deeply than ever before? So think about disobedience and our responding in obedience. The second thing is this. In what other ways do we see Jesus being a better Bible character in the Gospels? The Gospels do this pretty consistently, where they kind of put Jesus into this kind of archetype of a character we've already seen. So one other, besides Jonah, that I think of is like when Jesus goes up for the Sermon on the Mount, and he's kind of like Moses going up on Mount Sinai to get the law, right? And then he speaks this kind of big sermon on the law to the people that are around him. In what other ways do we see Jesus being a better Bible character, doing similar things to what they're doing, but fulfilling what they were actually called to do at the end of the day?
Just read the book of Hebrews.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
the book of Hebrews is all about that.
Yes, totally. And then the final question is this. Why is Jesus the very best? You know, the last thing that we want to do is have people come up to us with real questions, with real concerns about their life. And they say, hey, I'm wrestling through this. I think Christianity might offer me real truth, like real good news about this issue. And our response to them is just believe in Jesus and stop sinning. And the reality is you're not answering a tangible question. You're not speaking the truth of the gospel into their context. And when we go about our day-to-day lives, I think it's really helpful if we think about, I'm doing this, I'm acting in this way of obedience to Jesus because of who Jesus is. So why do we do the things we do? Why is Jesus the very best that God has to offer? So think through those. Hopefully they're helpful. If you haven't already, like, share, and subscribe to this channel. It's been such a pleasure doing these, and now that we've got these sweet backgrounds we're trying to leverage, it makes things hopefully a little bit more entertaining for you. But for now, this is John and Matt signing off. We will be talking to you all next week.